welcome to the Beyond Cinema Studio presented by CELEBS.com up here at TIFF. Ziad Doueiri, first of all, congratulations on your
Thank
film. It's been receiving a lot of buzz, since screening it, Telluride as well. What's that feel like to you, finally getting it out into the world and having these responses come in?
It's helping me actually reconcile with myself, because this process was really difficult to make. This film has been on an incredible roller coasters ever since the beginning. There was time where I didn't think the film would ever see the daylight, because people kept on going in, and then the subject was scaresome and they pull away. And finally, I teamed up with a production house in Paris, whom I've worked with before, and they gave me the news. They say we have good news and bad news. The good news, we can do the film, and the bad news is it's going to be very tight budget. Every time you tackle with the subjects that deals with the Middle East, especially about terrorism between the Palestinians and Israelis, right away it raises up a lot of antennas, because it's such an emotionally charged subject. It's packed with taboos, and the questions they always ask, is this film going to be pro-Palestinian, pro-Israelis? In itself, it always create controversy, even though we didn't set out to do a controversial films, but it goes with the subject. So the fact that it was at Telluride then in Toronto is actually the best reward, because less than a year ago, I didn't think I had a film.
And there were so many countries involved in putting this together as well.
A lot, yes.
I mean, it's Belgium and France and Egypt and
Qatar.
And Qatar. So it's like, right, and so why did there need to be that many countries involved? Did you end up shooting in each of those places? How did that work? How did that aspect work?
The Qatar involvement was actually the biggest, and Qatar had opened up a film fund for films coming out of the Middle East. And when they read the script, they thought it would fit within their agenda, and they gave us the money. And then the Egyptian, who wanted to work with me, also put a part of it. And France and Belgium also was involved. But I can't tell you how many companies and countries and film funds turned the film down.
Yeah.
So, it's not a unique story. It's just...
But that's the thing, I guess, is that everyone who watches a film that talks about the Palestinian and Israeli issue, even in a character-sensitive way that you did, you're going to bring whatever your opinion is to the movie. And so even just seeing that it didn't shoot in Israel, or, probably raises people's antennas as well and says, oh, well, this is probably not a pro-Israeli film.
It's interesting. We did shoot in Israel, 2/3 of the film, and 1/3 we shot it in Palestine, because this is how the story goes. This character goes from Tel Aviv to Nablus, so we had to follow the same path that he does. Also to keep the location as authentic as possible. We wanted to show this doctor who lives in a very modern, Western, high-tech town, which is Tel Aviv. And then when he does the shift and he goes to his native land, if you want to say, where the setting's completely different from Tel Aviv. So we wanted to show that contrast between Amin, the main character. He goes from a very medical society to the chaos that he grew up in, which he hasn't seen in 21 years, because he shut himself away from his background. The subject certainly raises a lot of questions. We did not want to make a film about the conflict, even though the first draft that I've written the conflict was very present. And then during the shooting and then during the editing, the film started to take its own path. And I had to trust and let go, not just hold on to the old material, and slowly became about this relationship with his wife. The mystery that surround his wife. So,
right, it's a question also as whether it's a love story or a story of betrayal too.
Don't they go together? They always go together.
Hopefully not too often.
No.
But talking about Amin, a doctor, Arab doctor working in Israel, obviously lauded, very successful, very integrated into that society. And for him to bear this surprise of the act that is committed by, or seemingly committed by his wife to him at the beginning, that that fundamentally alone for you as a filmmaker, knowing even if you didn't want to make it a political bent one way or the other, that you're going to spend the next couple of years with this film and have to deal with these political questions. Do you think that's a responsibility for the filmmaker that the filmmaker should have to deal with for a couple of years, becoming a spokesperson on these issues? Or would you rather that people could kind of see the film without that context, or is it too difficult?
You can't separate the subject, the story, the fictional story from the reality. It will always be tied. People will always try to find the link, the spectator, whether they are Israeli spectator, Jewish spectator, American spectator, Arab spectator. This Middle Eastern thing is so intricate part of our genes, and didn't start now. I think it started 2,000 years ago. But so to come and ask the filmmakers to bear the grudges, bear the whole responsibility is a lot.
Right.
It's already difficult for us to make our films. Also taken on our shoulder to deal with this issue is a little bit to ask, but it's inescapable. I'm gonna still have to deal with it and answer those questions. But at least we figured, me and the screenwriter, this was our goal, to make a film where we show your character facing incredible amount of dilemmas. The antagonist, the forces that are opposing this guy, is not just the conflict in itself, but the mystery of having been married to somebody that was hiding a lot of secret from him. This is where we wanted to take the story. We want to go into that direction. How can a man, supposedly happily married with a secular wife, modern wife, liberal wife, and Christian on top of it, would come to the conclusion that that person he thought he knew actually didn't know at all? That was the fundamental, that was the nucleus of the film. We wanted to take it. And you take this subject and you add to it the Middle Eastern conflict, it's gonna explode. So we're fluctuating.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting for you to take it to different audiences, because every audience around the world is going to have a different bias inherently. And so you're going to end up on both sides of the equation, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You're going to be accused of both sides of the equation.
So far, the reaction of the people who've seen the film have not come to me after this, because this is how you test the film, from the critics or from the public. So far, it hasn't raised so many controversies, because they kind of follow the story. Like this is not only about Palestine and Israel, but it's about the story of this man. But those who had reticence or had ambivalence about the film did not yet come and approach me and tell me, is this what you're trying to say? So far, it's been positive, but I'm more curious about the...
I'm curious, like, you're going to be traveling for a while with this film, and traveling with other people that are presenting stories about both sides of the conflict, and vehemently so. Like, some have very strong opinions, and so when you're going, and Telluride kind of, the press out of Telluride kind of made a case for this as well, is that you had Dror Morer, who had his film The Gatekeepers there.
Fantastic film.
And you had your film there, and each of these films deals with that area in a different way. And you'll be traveling potentially together with these people.
Are you saying that maybe I should stop traveling?
No, I'm saying, like,
I don't mind going back home and
resting. With these filmmakers, these other filmmakers, does the act of going to these film festivals with them create between you a brotherhood, or do you steer clear of each other, or does it become an opportunity for like 2 years of debate between you all?
I saw in Telluride Gatekeepers, and I absolutely loved that film. And I did not know Dror at that time. I knew his producer, Philippa, but I did not know Dror. So when I stepped out of the film, and then he saw my film, it felt like, strangely, as if him and I met way before we write our screenplay, discussed the subject, agreed on certain things, and went out to do the film. It felt like this, but it was not the case. So, look, certainly there is some common denominators between people who do these type of films. We may not agree on everything. We may not find common ground on everything. But without being philosophical about it, I don't want to be philosophical about it, because it's just not the way I think. The most important things for me is to be able to question the system. We have a duty. Your foremost duty is to do as strong and compelling stories as possible. This is because the audience is going to judge you on that, not on the subjects that you deal with, but how you dealt with the subject. But I've always felt, even since I was a child, grew up in a very liberal family, with my mother, who was a lawyer, who represented the National Organization of Women, NOW, Women's Lib in Lebanon, trying to fight female circumcision, trying to turn government in Lebanon into a secular state, civil marriage, and so on. I'm not saying I'm privileged or I'm smarter. It just happens that I grew up in a family that was always going against the system. There were many incidents in my childhood in Beirut where we were at risk. For example, when my mom was running the radio against the Syrian occupation in 1976, it was a secret radio station buried underneath a mosque that nobody knew. And I remember growing up in that period in Beirut where we had to live always in a kind of secrecy because it was dangerous to my parents' lives. So, you grow up and then it becomes part of your second nature that it's important to question your system and it's important to question your belief. I grew up all my life declaring psychological war against the Israelis because of our past. It was not easy for me to turn the coin and go do a film there, which supposedly who were the enemies. Why? Because we're curious. Because I don't think you can go on in life, not for everybody, but for me, without questioning the other side. I didn't believe the Israelis, no matter what has been done, no matter what atrocities are committed on both sides, I didn't believe at the beginning that they had a narrative. I didn't think the Jews had stories to tell. I didn't think they had a side of the story. It was important a little bit to explore. Why are they reacting like this? Why do they use an incredible amount of weaponry? And slowly we start finding out that every side has their own perspective. Whether you agree with it or not, that's a different topic. Whether you agree with the methods or not, that's a different topic. But when I got to Israel and I started working with the Israeli crew, I find out that they have their own anxiety, their own insecurity, their own fear, and sometimes they react according to that, not according to just biblical land or God entitled us to this land. It was not just about that. A little bit, but not about that. It's about seeing their other point of view who are actually also struggling for their survival. Now, I may disagree with their methods of going about it, but it was an incredible trip for me to be sitting and working with those people that I was at war with for a long time. I think really this is what stays with me today. A year after I've been there, to come here and start thinking, but I sat down with your most eviled characters. And we worked together on the film, and they went on a limb to help me. I'm not trying to be apologetic, by the way, because I know some people would say, you're overreaching. I am not. For example, when I saw Gatekeepers, it has a very positive intention, right? It's saying, look at the system, how we erred, how we made mistakes. I came out of that screening feeling angry again. And I said, these people, the Shin Bet people, abused their positions, even though they are being humanized in the documentary. But I came out regressing a little bit, going back to my old instinct. So what I'm trying to say is I did not do the complete turnover. I did not come today, I'm not today to say, let's just extend hands and have peace. This is a bit naive. I still have some of my prejudices. I still have some of my taboos. But in a way, I reconciled with a lot of things.
And I think film's going to help people on both sides of the story. Film helps people to define what their own narrative is for that story.
I think so.
But thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
And spending a few minutes with us.
Thank you.
Cheers.